"You're not on the list, Mom." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Because who says that at a wedding? Who says that to a grandmother standing in heels on a stone walkway with a gift in her hands? But my daughter-in-law said it clearly, loudly, and with that polished smile that looks sweet from a distance and sharp up close. The wedding was at the Harborview Maritime Museum, one of those upscale waterfront venues with glass walls and twinkle lights strung over the dock. From the parking lot, you could already hear the string quartet warming up inside. Soft, elegant, expensive. The kind of wedding that makes people whisper, "Wow, they really went all out." My name is Margaret Maggie Holloway. I'm 71, I'm a widow, and tonight I was supposed to watch my granddaughter, my first grandbaby, walk down the aisle. Her name is Emma. If you're listening to this story, please tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because I want to know how far these stories of mothers and grandmothers travel. And if you've ever been disrespected by your own family, I want you here with me until the end. That afternoon, I'd gotten ready the way a grandmother does when she's proud and trying not to show how emotional she is. I wore a dusty blue dress that fell just below the knee, simple but elegant. I pinned my hair back and put on the pearl earrings my husband bought me on our 10th anniversary. I even used the perfume I save for special days, because this wasn't just any day. This was the kind of day you think about when you're rocking a baby to sleep at 3 in the morning. The kind of day you imagine when you're packing lunches, paying bills, holding a household together. I held Emma's hand when she learned to skate. I helped with homework. I sat in the front row at school plays with a tissue already in my lap. Tonight, I wanted her to look out and see me there. Not as a background character, as her grandmother, her family. And here's what my daughter-in-law, Lauren, did instead. Lauren was standing at the entrance with a clipboard, like she owned the air around the doors. She wore a champagne-colored dress that shimmered under the lights and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Beside her stood my son, Brian, in a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. My son didn't look like my son. He looked like a man trying not to be recognized in a place where he should have been proud to stand beside his mother. I stepped forward with my gift bag in one hand and my clutch in the other. "Brian," I said, leaning in for a quick kiss. "You look handsome." He didn't move. Lauren's pen tapped the clipboard twice. "Name?" she asked. I blinked. "You know my name." She tilted her head. "I need it for the list." Something in my stomach tightened. "Maggie Holloway," I said. Lauren dragged her finger down the paper like she was searching for a problem, not a person. Then she paused, looked up, and delivered it like a verdict. "You're not on the list, Mom." That word, Mom, came out like she was mocking the title. People behind me slowed. A couple nearby turned their heads. Someone's laugh died halfway. I felt heat climb into my face. "What?" I asked quietly. "Lauren, that's not possible." Lauren's smile stayed perfectly intact. "The venue requires a confirmed guest list. If your name isn't here, you can't come in." I looked at Brian. "Brian, what is this?" My son's jaw tightened. He glanced past me at the line of guests, at the phones, the eyes, the awkward curiosity, and then he did the thing that broke something in my chest. He looked away, like I was a stranger making a scene, like I was a problem he hoped would disappear if he stayed still enough. I could have argued. I could have demanded they bring Emma out. I could have said, I helped pay for this wedding. I could have reminded everyone what kind of grandmother I'd been. But I've lived long enough to know something important. People like Lauren love when you lose control in public. They feed on it. They collect it like souvenirs. So I didn't give her the satisfaction. I took one slow breath, lifted my chin, and did the calmest thing I could do. I smiled. Not because I was okay, because I refused to look small. "All right," I said softly. "If I'm not on the list, then I won't go in." Lauren's eyes flickered, just for a second, because she wasn't prepared for me to comply. She wanted tears. She wanted begging. She wanted me to wobble in front of the dock lights like a broken old woman. Instead, I turned around and walked back down the path. And that walk was the longest walk of my life. 200 guests shifted aside as I passed. Some looked down at their phones. Some stared. Some pretended not to see. One woman mouthed, "Oh my God," like the humiliation was entertainment. I kept my posture straight. I kept my steps steady. But inside, it felt like someone had taken my heart and squeezed it hard. I reached the parking lot and sat in my car with my hands gripping the wheel. My earrings were still in place. My lipstick was still perfect. But I was shaking. Because this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about what they decided I was worth. And the part that stung most? It wasn't the crowd. It was my son's silence. I drove home with the radio off. When I walked into my house, the quiet hit me like cold water. I set my purse down, kicked off my heels, and stood in the hallway staring at the framed photo of my late husband on the wall. "Frank," I whispered, "you wouldn't have let this happen." Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I stopped waiting for someone else to protect me. I went straight to my study, opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder labeled Emma Wedding, Contracts and Receipts. Inside were copies of every payment, every invoice, every transfer confirmation. Because the truth was simple. They forgot one small detail. I paid for far more than anyone in that museum realized. And as I stared at those papers, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Where are you? Call me, now." I didn't answer. I picked up another folder, one with a name I hadn't touched in months, and slid it onto my desk. Then I called the only person who would tell me the truth and not sugarcoat it, my attorney. And when he answered, I said very calmly, "Hi, Tom. It's Maggie Holloway. I need you first thing in the morning. They locked me out of a wedding I paid for." There was a pause. Then his voice changed. "Maggie," he said quietly, "tell me everything." Tom Henderson had been my attorney for 27 years. He handled my husband's estate, my trust, the sale of a small rental property, everything that required careful paperwork and a steady hand. Tom wasn't flashy. He wasn't dramatic. He was precise. Which is exactly what you want when your family decides you're disposable. That night, I didn't tell him every detail. Not over the phone. I just told him the key facts in a quiet, controlled voice. Because anger makes you sloppy. And I was done being sloppy. "I have the contracts," I said. "I have the bank records. Everything is in my name." Tom didn't ask. "Are you sure?" He asked, "Do you want to handle this with restraint, or do you want to handle it with consequences?" I stared at the folder on my desk. "Consequences," I said. Tom exhaled slowly. "Okay, then tomorrow morning, you come to my office. Bring the folder. And Maggie, don't sign anything they put in front of you tonight. Not a napkin, not a quick acknowledgement, nothing. I promised I wouldn't." And then I hung up and sat there in my quiet house, listening to the clock tick like it was counting down to a different life. Because the wedding humiliation wasn't the first time Lauren had tried to put me in my place. It was just the most public. It started a year ago, when Lauren began using the word help the way some people use the word control. After my husband passed, Lauren suddenly became very interested in my safety. "You shouldn't be managing bills alone," she'd say. "I can set up your online banking alerts. Let me store your passwords in case something happens." At first it sounded caring, and grief makes you tired. Grief makes you grateful for someone to take things off your plate. So I let her help a little. And slowly that help turned into decisions being made without me. I'd get a new credit card in the mail that I didn't request. My phone would stop receiving certain bank alerts. A statement would arrive already opened. And when I asked questions, Lauren would smile and say, "Maggie, you worry too much." Then she started joking about it in front of people. "At least I handle Maggie's finances," she'd laugh at family dinners. "Otherwise, she'd fall for every scam on Facebook." Everyone would chuckle politely, and I would smile because I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. But inside, I started documenting. Not because I wanted war, because I wanted the truth. I kept records of every vendor payment for Emma's wedding, because I was the one who insisted on paying for certain things. Emma was excited, and Brian and Lauren came to me with those sweet, worried faces. "Mom," Brian said, "we just want Emma to have her dream day." Lauren added, "We're trying, but weddings are insane right now. Everything costs double." I asked, "How much are we talking?" They showed me a budget, venue, catering, flowers, photographer, the raw bar, the chair rentals, the lighting package. And because Emma is my granddaughter, because I loved her and wanted her to feel celebrated, I said yes. I wired money directly to the vendors. Sometimes Lauren would say, "I'll handle it." But I insisted, "No, send me the invoice. I'll pay it myself." I didn't do that because I was controlling. I did it because I've lived long enough to know this. If you don't keep your own paper trail, people will rewrite history on you. So when Lauren told me at the door, "You're not on the list," She wasn't just trying to keep me out of a wedding. She was trying to prove she could erase me whenever she wanted, but she couldn't erase my name off contracts signed in ink. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the dark street. Then I heard it, a car door, fast footsteps, and my doorbell, sharp, impatient, like whoever was outside believed they still had authority over me. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Lauren, and behind her, my son Brian, standing slightly back, hands in his pockets, like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Lauren rang again. I opened the door just enough to keep the chain latched. Lauren's smile appeared instantly, but it was strained now, tight around the edges. "There you are," she said. "What are you doing? You just left." I met her eyes calmly. "You told me I wasn't on the list." Lauren made a small, dismissive sound. "That was a situation. But now we need to talk." Behind her, Brian finally spoke, voice low. "Mom, can we come in?" I didn't move. "No." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "Maggie, don't be dramatic. Emma's upset." I almost laughed. "Emma's upset. Not Maggie was humiliated in front of 200 people. Not we're sorry. Just, Emma's upset." Lauren lifted her hand and I saw what she was holding. Papers. A thin stack clipped at the top. "Just sign this," she said, pushing it toward the crack in the door. "It's a simple acknowledgement. It clears up some vendor confusion. We need it tonight." My stomach went cold, because that was Lauren's move. Always paperwork. Always just sign. Always trying to make you commit to something before you understand what it is. I didn't reach for the papers. Instead, I stepped slightly to the side so she could see into my study. So she could see my desk, the folders laid open, the invoices, the receipts, the bank confirmations. And sitting right on top, bold and unmistakable, was a page Tom had emailed me minutes earlier, something he'd drafted fast after hearing my voice. The header read, "Notice of payment, dispute and service suspension, effective immediately." Lauren's eyes landed on it. Her lips parted slightly. The color drained from her face so quickly it looked like someone had turned off a switch. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. She just froze. And in that silent second, I knew something important. Whatever she brought to my door, she didn't think I had proof. She didn't think I had power. She thought I would fold. But the moment she saw those folders, she realized I wasn't the woman she could shove aside on a dock anymore. I kept my voice calm. "Lauren," I said softly, "what exactly are you asking me to sign?" She swallowed hard, still staring at the paperwork on my desk like it had teeth. And for the first time since I'd known her, my daughter-in-law didn't have an answer ready. She just stood there, frozen, because she finally understood. Locking me out was easy, but walking into my home while I held the receipts, that was a different game. Lauren stood on my porch holding those papers like a shield. My son Brian stood behind her, quiet and tense, eyes darting anywhere except my face. And I stood there with my door chained, my study visible behind me, and the evidence laid out like a table set for the truth. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the soft tick of my hallway clock, like time itself was unimpressed by their panic. Lauren finally cleared her throat. "Maggie," she said, voice tight, "you're overreacting. This is Emma's wedding night." I kept my expression calm. "Then you should have thought about that before you told security I wasn't on the list." Brian flinched. Lauren's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. There was confusion at the door, that's all. "No," I said. "That was a decision. And now you're here trying to get me to sign something without reading it." Lauren's lips pressed together. "It's just an acknowledgement. Vendor paperwork. We need to confirm who paid for what, so the venue can release." "Stop," I said, and my voice wasn't loud, but it landed. Lauren froze again, like her brain didn't know what to do when I didn't follow her script. I looked at the papers in her hand. "Slide them under the door." "What?" "If it's harmless, slide it under the door and I'll review it with my attorney tomorrow." Lauren's eyes widened in outrage. "We don't have time for that. That's not my problem," I said. "And you're not coming in." Brian finally spoke. "Mom, can we please just talk?" "We are talking," I said. "I'm telling you no." Lauren's smile reappeared, but now it was desperate. "Fine, don't sign. But don't pretend you care about Emma if you're going to sabotage her night." That word, sabotage, was designed to make me feel guilty for refusing to be manipulated. I stared at her for a long moment and said the simplest truth I had. I came to celebrate Emma, I said. You made sure I couldn't. Now you're here because you're scared of what I can do. Lauren's throat bobbed. Behind her, Brian's face tightened like someone had pulled a cord inside him. You're doing this because you're mad, he said quietly. No, I said. I'm doing this because I'm awake. Lauren took a breath like she was about to try one last push. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and something shifted in her eyes. Not anger, alarm. She answered with a forced brightness. Hi, yes? Then her voice dropped. What do you mean, hold? Brian leaned forward, trying to hear. Lauren turned slightly away from us, pressing the phone closer to her ear. No, there shouldn't be a hold. Who authorized? Her gaze flicked over my shoulder again, straight into my study, like the sight of my folders was suddenly louder than any conversation. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just waited. Lauren swallowed. Okay, I'll call you back. She ended the call and stared at me like she was seeing a different person. Brian's eyes narrowed. What was that? Lauren didn't answer him. She looked at me. Did you call the vendors? I tilted my head. You said you needed my signature for vendor confusion. Lauren's jaw clenched. Maggie? I cut her off. Lauren, don't say my name like you're in charge of it. Brian stepped forward. Mom, please, what did you do? And that's the thing. People think power looks like yelling. Real power looks like calm. I didn't do anything, I said. Yet. Lauren's face went pale again. I leaned a little closer to the crack in the door, keeping my voice even. But tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with my attorney, and I'm bringing every receipt with my name on it. Brian blinked. Receipts? Lauren's eyes flashed toward him, warning, silent, controlling. But I'd already watched that dynamic for too long. I paid for more than you think, I said. And I kept records. Brian's mouth opened slightly like he was about to deny it, but he couldn't. Not with Lauren standing there holding papers like a guilty secret. Lauren tried to regain control. Maggie, you gave that money as a gift. That's not what the contracts say, I replied. Brian stared at her. What contracts? Lauren's smile cracked. Brian, not now. Oh, now, I said. Now is perfect. Lauren exhaled sharply, then lowered her voice as if switching to strategy. Fine. What do you want? I almost laughed. Because people like Lauren always say that when they feel the ground shift under them. What I want, I said, is to be left alone tonight. Lauren's face tightened. You can't just punish us because your feelings are hurt. My eyes didn't leave hers. This isn't about feelings. This is about respect and control. Brian looked between us like he didn't recognize either woman. Then Lauren's phone buzzed again. This time she didn't answer with a fake smile. She answered with panic. Hello? Yes. Wait, what? Her eyes widened. No, that's impossible. The deposit cleared. She listened, and her shoulders visibly tensed. You can't cancel services, she hissed into the phone. People are already... She stopped speaking mid-sentence and looked straight at me, as if she suddenly realized exactly how fragile her perfect night really was. She hung up. Brian's voice rose. Lauren, what is happening? Lauren's eyes flashed with anger and fear. The wedding coordinator is saying there's an issue with confirmation. I nodded slowly, like I'd expected that. Because when you treat people like they're powerless, you forget they have names. Names on contracts, names on payment authorizations, names vendors actually answer to. I took one steady breath and said, You should go back to the venue. Lauren's lips parted. We're not leaving until you fix this. I didn't break anything, I replied. You did. When you decided I didn't matter. Brian's voice dropped. Mom. Emma's going to be devastated. My chest tightened at Emma's name, because I loved her. I truly did. But love doesn't mean surrender. I'm devastated too, I said softly. And no one seemed concerned about that when I was turned away like a stranger. Lauren lifted the papers again. Just sign, please. I looked at the stack and shook my head once. No. Then I did something that made Lauren's posture change instantly. I reached behind me and picked up my phone. I didn't call Tom. Not yet. I called the one person Lauren never expected me to call without her permission. The venue's main number, printed right on the top contract in my folder. Lauren's eyes widened like she could see the future forming. I held her gaze, pressed the phone to my ear, and listened as it rang. And when someone finally answered, I said, clear and calm, "Hi, this is Margaret Holloway. I'm the contract holder for Emma Holloway's event tonight. I need to confirm something immediately." Lauren didn't move. She couldn't, because she knew the next words out of my mouth could either save her or end her. The woman who answered sounded rushed, like she'd been running on adrenaline and polite lies all evening. "Harborview Events. This is Kendra." "Kendra," I said calmly. "This is Margaret Holloway. I'm listed as the contract holder on the venue agreement for tonight's wedding." A pause. Then her tone changed. Not warmer, more careful. "Yes, Mrs. Holloway, how can I help?" I kept my voice steady. "I was denied entry." Lauren's eyes snapped up. Brian turned his head sharply, like he couldn't believe I was saying it out loud. "I arrived at the entrance," I continued, "and your security team told me I wasn't on the guest list and therefore couldn't come in." Kendra inhaled. I'm sorry to hear that. I'd like to know who provided the guest list," I said, "and whether my name appears anywhere on it." Kendra hesitated. Lauren's face was tight, clenched. Brian looked at Lauren like he was seeing her in a new light and didn't like the shape of it. "Mrs. Holloway," Kendra said carefully, "the guest list is provided by the couple's representatives, which are my son Brian and his wife Lauren," I said. Kendra didn't confirm it, but her silence did. "Okay," I said. "Here's my second question. Am I still listed as the contracting party financially?" Another pause. "Yes," Kendra said, quieter. "Your name is on multiple documents." Lauren's hand tightened around her paper stack. I let my words land like stones. "So the venue accepts my money," I said, "but your doors don't accept me." Kendra's voice went small. "That isn't what we want." "It's what happened," I replied, "and I'm calling to clarify my options." Brian's eyes widened. "Mom." I held up a finger without looking at him. Not rude, just firm. Kendra cleared her throat. "Mrs. Holloway, what exactly are you requesting?" I looked straight at Lauren, and I said the sentence that would force the truth to surface without me raising my voice. "I'm requesting a full copy of every contract and every payment record tied to this event," I said. "Sent to my email tonight." Lauren's lips parted, but no sound came out. Because she knew what was in those contracts. She knew whose name was in those signatures. And she knew what she'd tried to do at my door, get my signature on a paper that could rewrite the story. Kendra's tone turned professional. "We can provide documentation, yes, but, Mrs. Holloway, if there is a dispute..." "Good," I said, "because I'd also like you to note this in your file. I do not authorize any new charges, changes, or addendums unless they are approved directly by me." Lauren's face went white. Brian stared at her. "Lauren, what were you having her sign?" Lauren snapped. "Nothing. It was standard." But her voice cracked on the last word, and Brian heard it. I heard it. Even Lauren heard it. Kendra asked quietly, "Mrs. Holloway, are you safe? Are you being pressured?" I didn't answer immediately. I let that question hang in the air so Lauren could hear it, feel it. Then I said, "I'm safe, and I'm not signing anything tonight." Lauren stepped forward, furious now. "Maggie, stop. You're humiliating us." I almost smiled at the irony. "You already handled the humiliation part," I said. Brian turned to Lauren. "Did you really tell them she wasn't on the list?" Lauren's eyes flashed. "Brian, not right now." But it was too late. Because once a question like that is spoken out loud, it becomes a crack in the wall. And cracks don't close by pretending they're not there. Kendra spoke again. "Mrs. Holloway, if you'd like, I can notify the event director that the contract holder has requested an immediate review." "Yes," I said. "Please do." Lauren's voice shot up. "No, don't." I looked at her, calm as winter. "You don't get to know my contract." Kendra said, "All right, I'm notifying the director now." When the call ended, the porch was silent again. Lauren stood there trembling, not with cold, with rage she couldn't safely use. Brian looked like he'd been punched without anyone touching him. "Mom," he said, voice low, "why are you doing this tonight?" I held his gaze. "Because tonight is when you decided I didn't matter." Lauren tried a new tactic, soft voice, pleading eyes. the performance of concern. "Maggie," she said, "Emma is going to remember this forever." I nodded slowly. "So am I." Then Lauren did what people like her always do when control slips. She went for the knife that doesn't leave bruises. "You're jealous," she hissed. "You can't stand that it's not about you." Brian flinched again, like he wanted to stop her but didn't know how. I took a breath and said quietly, "Lauren, I don't want attention. I wanted a seat." Lauren's jaw clenched. "You always think you're entitled." I tilted my head. "Entitled? I signed the checks." She opened her mouth, then stopped, because in that moment, Brian turned and looked at the open folder on my desk. He saw the line items. He saw the vendor names. He saw my signature on pages that were never meant to be weapons, only proof. Brian's voice went hoarse. "Mom, you paid for the venue?" I didn't answer Lauren. I answered him. "I paid for most of it," I said, "because you asked." Brian's face tightened. "Lauren told me you offered." Lauren snapped, "Because she did." I looked at Brian. "I offered because I love Emma. That doesn't mean I offered to be erased." Brian stared at Lauren now, really stared, and for the first time, she couldn't steer his eyes away. Lauren tried to recover fast. "Okay, fine. Then tell us what you want. Money back? An apology?" "What?" I stepped closer to the door chain, voice quiet. "What I want," I said, "is for you to stop treating me like a wallet you can shame." Lauren's breathing turned shallow. "If you ruin this wedding—" "I didn't ruin it," I said. "You did, the second you blocked me at the door." Then Brian's phone buzzed. He looked down, read the screen, and his face drained of color. Lauren leaned in. "What is it?" Brian swallowed hard. "It's Emma," he said. "She's asking why Grandma Maggie isn't here." Lauren's eyes snapped to me, wide, terrified, because now the wedding wasn't just a contract problem, it was a truth problem. And the truth was walking toward the spotlight whether she liked it or not. Brian lifted the phone slowly, thumb hovering. Lauren whispered, "Don't answer." I met Brian's eyes and said softly but firmly, "Answer her. Because whatever happens next, this is the moment your son stops being silent, or proves he never deserved the word mom again." Brian stared at Emma's name on his screen like it was a mirror he didn't want to face. Lauren whispered, "Don't answer." I said, "Answer her, because the truth doesn't stay quiet forever, especially not at a wedding where everyone is already watching for a crack in the perfect picture." Brian pressed accept. "Hey, Em," he started, voice careful. And then Emma's voice came through the speaker, thin and confused, loud enough that I could hear it from where I stood. "Dad, where's Grandma Maggie?" A pause. Behind Brian, I could hear the faint, muffled sound of music through his phone. Laughter, clinking glasses, the kind of happy noise that makes your absence feel even louder. Brian swallowed. She had to step out for a minute. Emma didn't buy it. "No, people are asking. Aunt Linda said she saw her outside and then she was gone." "Dad, where is she?" Lauren's face tightened. She leaned toward the phone, forcing a bright, sugary tone. "Hi, sweetheart," she sang. "Everything's fine. Grandma just—" "Lauren," Emma cut in, and the way she said her name made my chest tighten. Not angry. Hurt. "Why are you talking?" I asked my dad. Lauren blinked like she'd been slapped. Brian's voice cracked. I stepped forward so my voice could be heard clearly. "Emma," I said gently. "It's me." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "Grandma?" Emma's voice shook. "Where are you?" I closed my eyes for a second. The love I had for that girl wasn't complicated. It was clean. It was deep. It was the one reason I hadn't stormed the venue doors or shouted in front of strangers. "I'm home," I said softly. I came to the entrance. I was told I couldn't come in. Silence. Then Emma's voice changed, like her heart dropped into her stomach. "What do you mean you couldn't come in?" Lauren hissed through clenched teeth. "Maggie, don't!" I ignored her. "I was told I wasn't on the list," I said. So I came home. On the other end, I heard movement, shuffling, a sharp breath, like Emma had stepped away from people. And then I heard something worse than anger. I heard betrayal. "Dad," Emma whispered. "Is that true?" Brian's voice was small. There was confusion. There was no confusion," I said. still gentle. There was a choice. Lauren's eyes widened. She looked like she wanted to grab Brian's phone and throw it into the ocean. Emma's voice trembled. "Grandma, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." And I believed her, at least enough to not punish her for the sins of the adults around her. "Sweetheart," I said, "I'm not blaming you for something you didn't understand." I could hear Emma trying to breathe around tears. "But I am going to say something that matters," I continued. "A wedding is not just flowers and photos. It's how people treat the ones who loved them before the spotlight showed up." Lauren made a frustrated sound. "Okay, this is ridiculous. Give me the phone." Brian turned his shoulder away from her, instinctively protecting the call. That tiny move, so small most people wouldn't notice, was the first sign my son still had a spine somewhere inside him. Emma sniffed. "Dad, why would Grandma not be on the list?" Brian hesitated too long, and that hesitation answered the question for her. Emma's voice went sharp. "Was it you?" "No," Brian said quickly. "No, Emma, I didn't twist the knife. I didn't need to. The truth was already cutting through." "Emma," I said, "you don't have to fix this tonight. You deserve to have your moment, your ceremony, your joy." Emma cried harder. "But you're supposed to be there." "I know," I said softly. "I wanted to be there more than you can imagine." A long pause. Then Emma said very quietly, "Dad, put me on speaker. I want everyone to hear." Lauren's face went rigid. Brian's eyes flicked to Lauren, then to me. He hesitated, then did it anyway. The sound changed. Wider, more echo, and suddenly Emma's voice filled the porch air, like she'd stepped into the room with us. "If Grandma isn't allowed in," Emma said, voice trembling but firm, "then I don't want a reception." Lauren's mouth opened. "No, Emma," Lauren started. Emma continued, louder now. "I don't care who planned it. I don't care what people think. If my grandmother was turned away, then somebody needs to tell me why, right now." The background noise on the phone shifted. Gasps, murmurs, someone saying, "Oh my God." I heard a man's voice, likely the groom, asking, "Emma, what's going on?" Then I heard a wedding coordinator jump in, frantic, trying to quiet things down. Lauren lunged for Brian's phone. Brian moved back. Lauren snapped, "Brian, stop her!" He looked at Lauren, really looked, and in that second I saw something in my son's face I hadn't seen in a long time. Shame, and underneath it, anger, at himself. "Emma," Brian said, voice tight, "go somewhere private. Please." Emma's voice shook. "No, I'm tired of private. I'm tired of pretending." Then she said the sentence that turned the wedding from a family event into a moment everyone would remember forever. "Did you keep my grandma out because Lauren wanted it that way?" Lauren went pale. She didn't answer because she couldn't. Not without sounding guilty, not without sounding cruel. And that's when the event director's voice cut through the background. Calm, professional, but with an edge. "Mrs. Holloway?" a woman asked. "This is Dana, event director. I've been notified you're the contract holder. I'm very sorry. Can we speak directly?" I took a slow breath. "Yes," I said. "I'm here." Dana's voice shifted into crisis control mode. "We need to correct this immediately. If you'd like to come back, I'll personally escort you." I glanced at Brian and Lauren. Lauren's eyes were locked on my study door like she wanted to erase what she'd seen. And Brian looked like he was realizing for the first time that the woman he married had been using him as a shield. I said, "Dana, I'm not coming back to be paraded. I'm coming back as a grandmother." Dana answered quickly, "Understood." Then I said the one line that made Lauren's entire body stiffen. "And Dana, any paperwork being pushed at my door tonight, don't honor it." Lauren's chin lifted in defiance. "You can't." Dana didn't even let her finish. "Yes, ma'am," Dana said firmly. "Only the contracting party can approve changes." Lauren's eyes widened, because she knew what that meant. No addendum, no backdated gift acknowledgement, no rewriting the record. And on the phone, Emma whispered, "Grandma, please come." My heart squeezed. I looked at Brian, and I said calmly, the sentence that put the next move in his hands, "Do you want to be my son right now? Or do you want to stay her assistant?" Brian's throat worked like he was swallowing something bitter. Then he exhaled. And finally, he said, "Mom, I want you there." Lauren whispered, "Brian." He didn't look at her. He looked at me. And for the first time all night, he sounded like my son. "I'm coming to get you," he said. Lauren stood perfectly still, frozen, because she just realized the list wasn't the only thing that could change tonight. Brian drove us back to the harbor view in silence. Lauren rode in the back seat like a storm cloud trapped in fabric, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes burning holes into the headrest. I sat in the passenger seat, hands folded, looking out at the streetlights streaking across the window. I wasn't shaking anymore. That part was over. Because there's a moment in every woman's life, especially a mother, especially a grandmother, when humiliation stops being pain and becomes clarity. And clarity is dangerous to people who rely on your confusion. When we pulled up, Dana, the event director, was already outside waiting near the entrance. She looked composed, but her eyes were sharp, like she'd seen this kind of family drama enough times to recognize what it actually was. Control. Dana walked right up to me. "Mrs. Holloway?" "Yes," I said. "I'm so sorry," she replied. And she said it like an adult, not like someone trying to smooth over a complaint. "Security received a guest list. Your name was not included. That should never have resulted in you being denied entry without a call to the contracting party." Lauren spoke up, quick and icy. "It was an oversight. We're fixing it." Dana didn't even glance at her. She looked at me. "Would you like to proceed inside?" Dana asked. I nodded once. "Yes." Then I added calmly, "And I'd like confirmation that my seating is where it was supposed to be." Dana blinked, then nodded. "Of course," Lauren hissed. "She can sit anywhere." Dana finally looked at Lauren, polite but firm. "Ma'am, the bride requested a specific family arrangement. We're honoring that." Lauren's cheeks flushed. We walked inside, and the second the doors opened, the room's noise hit us like a wave. Music, laughter, the scent of champagne and flowers. But underneath it all was a current of whispering, the kind that spreads faster than the dessert course. People saw me. They saw Brian beside me. They saw Lauren behind us. And suddenly, every phone and every stare had a story to attach itself to. Emma was near the sweetheart table, face blotchy from crying. The groom stood close, protective. A few bridesmaids hovered like a human wall. When Emma saw me, she broke. She rushed across the floor in her wedding dress and grabbed me so tightly I felt her whole body shake. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my shoulder. "I didn't know." I held her. "I know, sweetheart." Then I pulled back, touched her cheek, and looked her right in the eyes. "This is your night," I said. "Don't let anyone turn it into a weapon." Emma nodded, tears falling again. Then she turned her head and looked straight at her father. Brian looked like he wanted to disappear. "Dad?" Emma said, voice steady now. "Did you let her do this?" Lauren's head snapped up. "Emma!" Emma raised a hand. "No, I'm done." The room quieted around us. Not completely, but enough that nearby people could hear. Brian swallowed. I messed up." Emma nodded once, like she'd expected that answer. Then she looked at Lauren. "Why?" Emma asked. Lauren smiled, sharp and bright, like she was about to perform. "Sweetheart, you were stressed," she said. This was about the list and the venue. Emma cut her off. "Why was Grandma not on the list?" Lauren's smile twitched, and for the first time, she didn't have a clean lie ready. Because Emma didn't ask it like a child. She asked it like a woman who had just watched a mask slip. Lauren's eyes flicked around the room, searching for allies, but all she found were witnesses. She tried again. "It was a misunderstanding." Dana stepped forward. "Ma'am," Dana said, calm and professional. "For accuracy, the list submitted omitted Mrs. Holloway. Security did not make that up." Lauren froze, just like she had on my porch, because Dana wasn't family. Dana wasn't afraid of her. Dana was just a professional stating facts. Emma's gaze didn't move. "Lauren?" Emma said quietly. "Did you do it?" Lauren's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Brian's voice cracked. "Lauren, answer her." Lauren looked at Brian like she couldn't believe he'd asked her to tell the truth. And that, right there, was the moment she realized she'd lost control of him. Not because I yelled, not because I begged, because the truth had finally become louder than her performance. Lauren exhaled sharply and muttered, "I didn't think it mattered." A murmur rippled through the nearby guests. Soft gasps, a few, "Oh my God." Emma stared at her. "You didn't think my grandmother mattered." Lauren snapped, "I was trying to protect the day. She always makes it about herself." The lie was so ugly it barely deserved a response. But Emma didn't scream. She didn't throw a glass. She just said slowly, clearly, "Grandma never makes it about herself. She makes it possible." Brian looked like he'd been punched again, but this time by truth. Lauren turned to me, eyes blazing. "Happy now?" I held her gaze and kept my voice calm. "No," I said. "I'm not happy. I'm awake." Then I leaned in just enough that only she could hear the next words. Quiet, clean, final. "I'm done signing anything you put in front of me, and I'm done letting you manage what isn't yours." Her eyes widened, because she knew exactly what I meant. Not just the wedding, the bank access, the help, the quiet control, the way she'd tried to make me feel old and confused so she could move through my life like it was her property. Dana stepped up beside me and spoke softly. "Mrs. Holloway, your requested documents have been emailed, and for your records, I've noted the denial of entry incident in our file." Lauren's face tightened like she'd swallowed something bitter. Because that little note, official, dated, factual, was the kind of thing you can't charm away later. Emma took my hand. "Please, sit with me." And I did. Dana escorted us to the front, where my chair should have been all along. The room watched. Lauren stood behind us, stiff, trying to smile, failing. Frozen, because she could feel the shift. The family wasn't orbiting her anymore. It was orbiting the truth. Later that night, when the music started again and the guests tried to pretend it was all normal, Brian approached me quietly. "I'm sorry," he said. "I let her steer everything." I looked at my son. Really looked. "You don't need to beg," I said. "You need to change." He nodded, eyes wet. "I will." Lauren didn't come near my table again. She stayed on the edges, whispering into her phone, watching the room like she was counting exits. Because she finally understood something she should have learned a long time ago. You can lock a grandmother out of a venue, but you can't lock her out of a contract she signed, and you can't bully a woman who keeps receipts. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been treated like you mattered only when people needed your money, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And tell me where you're listening from, because I want every mother and grandmother who's ever been erased to know she's not alone.